Hey, what's up everyone? Henry here. Let's first talk about the target audience of this video before we dive in. So if you're not very technical, you're pretty new to blockchain, or you're just not sure how to run a node on the Celo network, this video is for you. However, if you're pretty up to date with Celo's progress and you want to dive right into Celo's technical documentation, I'll add a link below. So with that, I want to break down this video into 3 parts, and feel free to skip to the part that you want to consume. Number 1. I want to explain blockchain, how it works in very simple terms so everyone can understand. Number 2 is there are quite a number of challenges with the current financial systems in the world. I want to share a few thoughts on how I think Celo as an open platform can solve a few of these challenges. 3 is I'll walk you through how to run a full node on the Celo network step by step. So with that, let's dive in. To understand blockchain, let's first talk about some differences between Web 2.0 and Web 3.0. Alright, starting with Web 2.0, I think everyone has experienced the Web 2.0 schema to some extent. I'll give you an example. The Web 2.0 is called the client-server model, and let's say we're searching on Google on your phone, and we're searching what's the best show on Netflix right now. So your phone in this case is the client, and the server is Google server. So what your phone does is it sends a request to Google server. So what the Google server does is it does some computation and it modifies its database and gives you back a response. So when your phone receives that response, it renders that into a web page and you see the results. So the brief takeaway is in Web 2.0, there are dedicated servers and clients, and only the central server has authority to access the database. Well, in Web 3.0, it's no longer true. What we have is no longer dedicated servers and clients. So let's talk about how that works. Let's say I want to search for the same thing, but instead of having to ask Google, I can ask my friend Jane's server, or I can ask a stranger server, let's call it John's server. What allows me to do that is the data is living on multiple devices. Even myself, I can run a server too. So what that means about Web 3.0 is there's no clear distinction between servers and clients because you can be both at the same time. And what that also gives is there's no longer a central authority, which means it's more decentralized and hence more secure and resilient to attacks. We said that in Web 3.0, data is shared across different devices. But how's that data shared? Here comes blockchain. So in simple terms, a blockchain is pretty much a shared database. All right, let's give you an example to see how this works. Let's say at the very beginning, we have this information saying there are 2 people. One is Jane, who has $3, and John has $2. And we want to capture this initial information somewhere. So we have it, and as time evolves and goes on, there's new information coming in. Let's say in the first minute, Jane sends $2 to John, and John sends $1 to this new person called Joe. So something has happened, and we want to record this information, but we don't want it to be all over the place. So we want to compile them somehow, and so we invented blocks. So each block is composed of multiple transactions. So with that, we have a new block, and this new information needs to be shared with others and needs to be confirmed that it's correct. So how does that work? So when a new block is proposed, it gets propagated through different people, and each person verifies the validity, and if they agree with this, they put their signature there. So when the majority of these people reach a consensus that this block is good, is correct, then they add this block to the previous block. So we add block after block after block, so now we have a chain of blocks and hence a blockchain. Okay, now we know blockchain is pretty much just a shared database. So how does this shared database solve real-world problems? I want to tell you a story. In one of Celo's research trips, we met Kabru. Kabru is a 47-year-old father, husband, and a former fisherman of the Republic of Congo. There's a lot preventing Kabru from reaching his full potential. For one, he doesn't have a formal ID. That means he doesn't have access to a lot of financial tools that we take granted. Number 2 is he can't even store cash at home because He has fear of his physical safety and theft. So for these reasons, Kabru cannot build wealth. Kabru is not alone in these challenges with finance and livelihood. He's one of the 1.7 billion unbanked, and he's also one of the 1.1 billion who don't have an ID. So for that reason, if he wants to send some money to his brother in Maryland, United States, he needs to pay $15. And just sending a small amount of cash to his neighbor costs up to 20% transaction fees. So if we summarize Kabru's challenges, there are three of them. One, he doesn't have an ID. Two, he doesn't have a bank account. Number three, sending money to others is so expensive. But what we do know is Kabru has a cell phone. Alright, here comes Celo. To address Kabru's challenges, Celo provides financial services that can just live on Kabru's phone. And in other words, Celo is an open platform that provides financial services to anyone with a mobile phone. So let's see how exactly Celo addresses Kabru's problems. Number one, he doesn't have an ID or bank account, but that's okay. He has a cell phone. What that means is his phone number can represent Kabru's identity. So how that works is Kabru can download a Celo-enabled mobile wallet app on his phone, and his phone number is his pretty much bank account number. And with that, he's able to deposit his wealth and pretty much send money to anyone with a mobile phone. So on the topic of transferring, let's talk about the second thing. Is transfers are really expensive in current days. So how Celo helps with that is Celo uses a decentralized network. That means there's no central authority collecting super high fees. And what that means is Kabru is able to send money to pretty much everyone in the world in under just a cent. So with that, with Celo, Kabru is able to accumulate wealth and exchange value with pretty much everyone in the world.
Now we understand that Celo is a mobile-first, user-centric platform for financial tools, but how does it work? So to power the platform, the Celo network has three types of nodes. At the very center, there are 100 validators who write transactions to the blockchain. In other words, when validators reach a consensus among themselves, they get to add changes to the shared database. Next, there are a number of full nodes who play the role of servicing the end users and connecting them to the validators. When processing an end user's transaction, validators charge a transaction fee, and full nodes receive a portion of that transaction fee as their financial incentive. However, the value of full nodes goes way beyond relaying transactions. For one, they can directly serve end users when there's no need to modify the blockchain. For example, if Jane wants to check her balance, she can directly ask a full node rather than going all the way to a validator. This way, Jane can enjoy a much more responsive end user experience. In addition to servicing end users, full nodes are useful for people who are running services on the Celo blockchain because full nodes have a full copy of the chain data, and hence the name full node. Thus, by running a full node, people can have a peace of mind that their data is correct. Finally, Celo's light clients sit at the edge of the network. Light clients typically reside on end user cell phones and are connected to mobile wallets. So why are they called light clients? Because the data is light. Celo's light clients only require about 100th of the data that Ethereum requires in order to sync with the blockchain. This way, users across the world can enjoy fast and reliable financial services at a relatively low cost. Now we understand how Celo's blockchain works. I want to re-emphasize why someone might want to run a full node on Celo. Three reasons. Number one, running a full node yields financial rewards because full nodes receive a portion of the transaction fees. Number two, it allows Celo to help people like Kabru by providing fast and reliable financial services at people's fingertips. Number three, running a full node enables people to operate services on Celo by having a full copy of the chain data. Alright, now let's go through the steps of running a full node step by step. I'm going to start from the very beginning. So at the very beginning, you need to think about, do you want to run a full node on your local computer or on a cloud server, or you want to purchase hardware that runs a full node. So for today's demonstration purposes, I'm going to use Google Cloud Platform. You can also use AWS, Azure, or any other solution that gets your hands on a server or a computer that supports the Linux system. So let's see how it works. I'm going to search Google Cloud Platform login. And here, while we wait, we'll go to the console. And if you don't have an account with Google, they will point you towards a sign up process. And when you go to this dashboard, what you want to do is you want to search for compute engine. And on the left-hand side, you see VM instances. What that means is a virtual machine. So what we want to do right now is to create a new VM instance, create a new server. Let's hit create. Okay, let's call it Celo full node. And do we need any labels? Probably not. In terms of regions, it really depends on where you're at, and typically we recommend you to run servers where there are very few other full nodes, because the closer the full node is towards the end users, the better it is. So let's see what is fun here. I like Montreal, so let's pick Montreal. And 1A is fine. I want something actually custom. Let's build something custom. I believe 2 CPUs will work, and let's still give it 8 gigs of RAM. And okay, nothing really interesting. Okay, here, this is pretty important. We want to choose an operating system that we're familiar with. I suppose that you might not be familiar with any of them. If not, I believe the safe bet would be Ubuntu. And I will go for the most classic one is 16.04, but now we're seeing 20.04. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. And we want SSD because we need to write it fast. I think in the next few years, 64 gigs of disk should be more than enough. So let's select that. Scrolling down, API access. I don't think we need to care about that. So with that, let's create the machine and just wait for it. Let's log on to the machine. So the default is SSH. So let's click that. It will direct you to a new window. So now we have the server, we have pretty much everything ready. So what we need to do is follow the instructions on docs.celo.org. Let's connect without it. Now we have access to the server. Let's go to the documentation and follow it step by step. So where we'll go is docs.celo.org. And what we want to run is a full node on mainnet, because other networks are testnets. So we're running a full node. So we're going to keep reading this and saying it has incentives to run a full node. And what we need to do first is to start with installing a software called Docker. We're running a Linux server, so we're going to find our distro here. Now let's follow the instructions to install Docker Engine on Ubuntu. We'll start with the very first command to uninstall old versions. There's currently no old version, so that's good. So the recommended approach here is to set up Docker's repositories. So we're gonna start with copy pasting the commands one by one. And saying yes. Okay, now we have installed the packages. So we will copy paste the next command. Okay, let's verify the information as instructed. Seems to be working. Most likely your computer will be running x86, so we're gonna copy this command. Okay, moving on to the next command. Finally, we're going to install Docker. Yes. So what we need to do next is to verify that Docker engine is installed correctly. So we'll run hello world. Hello from Docker. Seems that everything's working. Now, after installing Docker on our machine, we're ready to move on to the next steps. We start with configuring environment variables. We copy the commands, we paste it on the server, and we also want to pull the Docker image. So what's different between the documentation and Linux is we need some root access on our Linux server. So we have the command, but also we want to add 4 characters sudo in front of the command. So we hit, and we'll just wait to download the Docker image. So now we have the image. Let's move on. And we want to set up a data directory. So we're gonna copy paste these commands. And now we're about to create an account. So there are 2 approaches to create an account. You can follow the documentation here, or what you can do is to use a Ledger hardware wallet. So to use the Ledger hardware wallet, you can follow the instructions here. However, for today's purposes, let's just use the given approach here. But what I do want to note is that this approach is less secure than using a Ledger hardware wallet. So with that, let's create a new account. Permission denied. You see, when we miss adding sudo, we get permission denied. So we want to say sudo. Your password. Okay, so we need to lock this account with a password. Let's give it a password. We have some interesting information. Let's see what we're given. We have a public address of your key. So this is the address you need to receive tokens or give tokens. In the meantime, there will be a private key created. Make sure you don't send that private key to anyone. Now what we need to do is to record that public key somewhere. So we want to say your account address is your public key. So we export it to the environment variable and we keep moving on. So now it's time to configure the node. So what this command is doing is, let's create a first block on the chain. So let's copy this command and make sure that you run sudo in front of the command. All right, so we do see this error message of fail to enumerate USB devices. Don't worry about it, it's totally fine. And now we have successfully written the Genesis state. So now we're ready to move on to the next part. Okay, so now we copy this command and paste. So let's see if there's anything that called Docker run. There is something called Docker run. That means we need to add sudo in front of it. We hit enter. Okay, now we have the boot nodes set up, ready to move on to the next part, which is to start the node. I'm gonna copy, sudo, paste. So here is where the magic starts to happen. And the moment you enter return, you'll be able to start the full node. So let's see the magic. After you typed in the command to run a full node, let's check how the full node is running right now. So what we can do is to see the logs of that full node. First what we'll do is docker container list. So we can see what types of Docker containers are running. Next part we're going to do is docker logs, and we're going to copy paste the container ID of our full node. Ooh, a lot of nodes. So what we see here is a mix of Ethereum peer connected and imported new chain segment. Imported new chain segment means we're syncing with the blockchain, and that means it's running properly. With that, congratulations to you. You are now running a full node on Celo.